Echo's been kind of a game changer. It's designed to be a game changer for respiratory distress, also known as ARDS, acute respiratory distress syndrome, which we're experiencing here with the coronavirus. Going a little bit into the coronavirus and what it causes for the patient is basically, it's like the worst pneumonia you ever had in the respect that, you build up that fluid in your lungs and all of a sudden you can't absorb oxygen, you can't exit CO2, your lungs are non-functioning. What they're realizing with ventilators and all that is they're actually causing some damage to the lungs. So myself and my team looked at this. We had several doctors that were working with us on a couple of the projects, and they explained to us, what their challenges were. And I asked them, why aren't you using ECMO?
Thanks for stopping by the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. I'm the host of the show, Sean Dustin. If this is your first time listening, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. It's good to have you with us today. If you would like to support the show, please subscribe, rate, and review on your favorite podcast platform. If I'm not currently available on a platform you listen to, let me know and I will make sure that I get there. I have merchandise available now: hoodies, t-shirts, mugs, and other items. This is another way you can help support the show. The show will get a portion of the proceeds to help keep the lights on around here. You can find direct links to iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, merchandise, and anywhere else we are online at the bottom of the show notes. Go to the Linktree link, and that will take you to all the ways to connect with the show. Today, my guest is Jake Cuzdey. Jake is an inventor that reached out to me online to ask if I could help him spread the word and info about a game-changing approach to treating patients that are infected with COVID-19 virus. It has to do with a product called ECHO, or extracorporeal hybrid oxygenation. ECHO breathes oxygen directly into the blood, taking the pressure off of the lungs to allow healing. And I'm no medical expert or inventor of medical products, so I'm going to let Jake explain this to you. Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, Echo's been kind of a game changer. It's designed to be a game changer for respiratory distress, also known as ARDS, acute respiratory distress syndrome, which we're experiencing here with the coronavirus. Going a little bit into the coronavirus and what it causes for the patient is basically, it's like the worst pneumonia you ever had in the respect that, you build up that fluid in your lungs and all of a sudden you can't absorb oxygen, you can't exit CO2, your lungs are non-functioning. What they're realizing with ventilators and all that is they're actually causing some damage to the lungs. So myself and my team looked at this. We had several doctors that were working with us on a couple of the projects. And they explained to us, what their challenges were. And I asked them, why aren't you using ECMO, which is extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. It's also known as kind of a heart and lung machine. This technology has been around for, many decades. So one of the doctors on our team, Dr. Carl Kaufman, mentioned that they are using it as they can, but it's just widely unavailable. There's less than 300 of these machines in the United States. So it's not a realistic solution or therapy for the number of coronavirus patients that we're seeing. So with that, went back to the office and started putting stuff up on the whiteboard to try to build a solution for a respiratory therapy that fit within the envelope available to us during this pandemic. And within that criteria, we put on there, supply chain management, knowing that our manufacturers are going to be stressed and, supplies are going to be in high demand for anything respiratory related. So we wanted to design this within what was available at the hospitals already or easy for them to get. So with that, we started looking at existing machines that we could retrofit that a hospital would naturally have and not be in high demand during this pandemic. Going forward from there, we also wanted to make sure it was cost effective with the projections that they gave us early on. They were projecting, a couple of million deaths, up to a couple million deaths in the United States alone. So we wanted to make sure that this was cost effective, so it was a more realistic treatment to the pandemic. Moving forward from there, we wanted to make sure it was an absolute. Viruses and the way that our bodies react to those viruses, it's basically our body's immune system reacting to a foreign body within it. So, when you have a normal flu or, any other illness, the mucus that you build up and the cough that you develop, that's caused from your immune system's response to the virus, not necessarily the virus itself. I think a lot of people have a little bit of misconception there. So what I wanted to look at was what's going to be an absolute to make sure that people don't die during this pandemic. So using ECMO as a baseline, we started looking at these other machines and what's available within that criteria mentioned. And we discovered that compared to ECMO, which is basically a pump, a blood pump, a console, and an oxygenator, which is about a little 4-inch box, we looked at that and we said, shoot, that greatly resembles a hemodialysis machine, there's hundreds of thousands of these machines, even possibly millions in the United States for kidney dialysis. And these are available at not only hospitals, but clinics. And there's many of them that are still highly functioning machines that are just in warehouses, not being used at all. So we started to look at the basic fundamentals of ECMO and say, what parts do we need to transfer over or retrofit onto a hemodialysis machine? It was important to me to make sure this was easy for the hospitals or whoever's rolling this out to retrofit this machine. So we got this down to about a 5 to 15 minute retrofit with a couple of small components, the oxygenator and a couple of valves that we can retrofit this onto a hemodialysis machine, causing that hemodialysis machine to now be a direct blood oxygenator. What that does is it oxygenates the blood directly. They use these machines during lung transplants and other major operations. So as you can imagine, your body still needs that oxygen, still needs that CO2 exited out of your bloodstream, so you don't build up that toxicity. So this machine is well known and proven to replace the lungs mechanically. So I believe by doing that you would, in the more severe patients, you would overcome the challenges associated with coronavirus. That in conjunction with some pharmaceuticals to decrease inflammation. One of our early suggestions to some of the doctors we've consulted with and talked to was to utilize immunosuppressants to decrease the immune system's response a little bit, a mild prescription for that. And what we believed based on our research was that would decrease the immune system's response enough that your body would, have the oxygen support from our echo or ECMO, and also in conjunction with those pharmaceuticals would decrease the immune system's response to where the patient would be able to survive this illness. It's not going to be a comfortable process no matter what you do, but it definitely beats the alternative. We designed it specifically to be able to roll it out to millions in an instant if need be.
And have you, I know you have some doctors that are working on your team, but have you presented this to any doctors outside of your team and in the field? And actually any of the people that have Pence's, he's the one who's heading up this whole deal, right?
Yeah, the task force. Yeah,
task force.
So we started off with kind of some extreme fast engineering to put this together back in early March, when there was less than a couple of thousand deaths worldwide to this pandemic. And we looked at that and we said, okay, we need to get this to the White House. The reason we needed to get it to the task force there at the White House is because this is a class two machine. So, according to the FDA, we'd normally have to go through a pretty lengthy process, even though we're taking two FDA approved machines and putting them together as a force multiplier. They still want to look at that and make sure that all of our I's are dotted and T's are crossed. And I would definitely want them to do that. So the only way to do this during a pandemic would have been to reach out to the White House and get an executive order and possibly a mandate pressing this forward through the FDA process, expediting it, if you will. And this is acceptable chain of action. We've seen this with a couple of the ventilator models that they've retrofitted and all that. So we followed suit. We were able to get an introduction to Ben Carson. We talked to him through a third party, and we kind of got brushed off a little bit in the beginning for a first reaction, which I can understand. He's probably inundated with 1,000 phone calls a day, and he doesn't have time to field every single one of them. So we got a little bit of a good job, keep at it, talk to you soon kind of reaction. It's a little bit disappointing because, looking back now, we're, 125,000 deaths that I believe could have been avoided. So we kind of licked our wounds from that. We went back and we started reaching out to respiratory perfusionists and therapists and various other specialty doctors that are involved directly with blood oxygenation therapy, such as ECMO. And we found a couple of doctors down south there, one in New Mexico and one in Texas. Both of them very well known in their industry, very well known for blood oxygenation therapy. These guys could tell you, every book ever written about ECMO and blood oxygenation therapy. Reached out to them to ask their opinion, and our goal was to get their endorsement on this technology, get them to write a white paper on it of their own opinion, and help us through expedited clinical trials. First conversation, they saw exactly what I was trying to do. They seemed very, should I say, jaw dropped at the idea. It made a lot of sense to them. So, we continued that conversation. We talked about flow rates of the hemodialysis machine versus the ECMO machine. We talked about any clotting issues. We talked about what type, all the way down to what type of tubing to use, and the similarities between hemodialysis and ECMO. They're working. They became part of our team, and they are working closely with us. Our intent with them is to actually simplify the process even further over the next couple of weeks. As an example, ECMO is normally hooked up in what they call a VV or VA orientation, veno-venous or veno-arterial. And basically that means it's either hooking both lines in and out, it's hooking into a vein in a vein or a vein in an artery. What I would like to do to even simplify that further, to make it easier on the manpower needed, is to simplify that down to hooking it into an artery in the arm and a vein in the other arm. This will make it a lot easier, to the point where an EMT could hook it up if you wanted. Right now, a seasoned RN or a emergency room doctor would be more than comfortable to do VV or VA. So we're moving forward with launching it in that way. Further to prove the technology and the obvious nature of it, we've reached out to a firm in Seattle, Washington, that specializes in medical devices. We talked to their CEO, Rich. He's a great guy. Had a good multi-hour conversation with him, explaining the technology, sent him over some documentation. He looked this over and he said, this is an extremely simple solution. So what do you need me for? He said, and I said, well, you guys are a third-party engineering firm. I'd like you to prepare the FDA filings, even though we know that will get held up. And we'll at least have that filing number. We'll have that package ready as the FDA would normally require. We'll get held up because the FDA is working on, testing and ventilators right now, and they've pretty much put an all stop to Class 2 equipment and others. So with their write-up that we expect in the next couple of weeks, along with these couple of doctors, we're going to be reapproaching the White House and hopefully getting an executive order for pushing this through the FDA and a mandate to require or recommend practitioners to lower the standard in which they hook a patient up to echo versus the standard that they would normally use with ECMO. The reason for that is because ECMO is such a rare machine. It's a very expensive machine. It's a very rare machine. It's, you know, they use that as such a last line of defense. I mean, the patient has to be in really bad shape, and that machine has to be available for them to even consider it. So with this multiplier, what we're hoping to accomplish is for this mandate to dictate, let's hook them up sooner. Let's hook them up before they start experiencing renal failure, heart failure. And if you want, I'd like to go into that a little bit of what, you know, why is the older population and why is people with underlying conditions more susceptible to damage here. Basically, when you deprive, you know, any part of your body of oxygen and you allow your body to increase that toxicity of the CO2 by not exiting it properly through your lungs, that causes an extreme amount of stress. Our older population, they're more susceptible to damage caused from that stress than a younger, healthier patient. People with underlying conditions, people with previous heart conditions or kidney problems, they're going to be more susceptible. So when you start choking that off of oxygen, that causes damage. You add to that equation and you start adding inflammation caused by the irritation of the virus. And, you know, you have a little bit of a perfect storm. That's why these patients are dying. And we believe we could change that. We believe we can turn that around and at least have a therapy. This isn't a cure-all. This isn't a vaccine, but it's a therapy that would allow us in large numbers to put an all stop to the death toll with coronavirus.
So if you were approved for this, how long do you think it would take from to get it out to where it's actually starting to help people? Would it be the first? Would you be able to catch the first wave that we're in now, or would it be something that's going to end up in the second wave?
Definitely a great question. So both. You know, I think that we would. I think the smartest rollout for us as a civilian company, if we did not have the cooperation of the federal government beyond authorizing us to do it, if they did not cooperate on the rollout, what we would do is most likely reach out to companies like DaVita that manages and owns many of the a large market share of the kidney dialysis machines. They've already got the they've already got the manpower. They've already got the maintenance personnel that are more than capable of following a one page instruction sheet on how to retrofit these machines. If we did have the cooperation of the federal government in full, I think this could be rolled out inside of 2 weeks comfortably, and that would be using the Army Corps of Engineers and other civilian contractors to be able to roll this out. The design is specifically built to fall within this first wave of the pandemic. And, unfortunately, politicians are extremely busy right now, and getting a hold of them and getting a call back and getting them to understand where this therapy lands and why it's so important has been very challenging. So moving forward to our second wave, hopefully we get this out in the next couple of weeks, and we're ready to do so on our side. Going into the second wave, this would be vital. We would be able to crush this second wave. Hundreds of thousands of projected families would not be impacted by a death of a loved one. And moving forward, even beyond this pandemic, we already lose, a couple of 100,000 people a year worldwide. 200,000 to 300,000 people worldwide is what I've been reading, from the common flu and from other pneumonias and other respiratory distresses. This is a therapy that can be readily available to hospitals that didn't have the more sophisticated ICUs and this ECMO machine. By having echo available, we could see a ginormous drop in those deaths every year that we experience every single year moving forward in our life. So, the sooner the better. It's every day I get up, I look at this number of this climbing death toll, and of course, you hear a lot of people comparing it to other causes of death and all that. That doesn't matter to the 130,000 people that have lost a family member. It doesn't matter if more people died elsewhere. What matters is people, those that we love and those that we want to protect, and that's why we designed this.
Yeah, I mean, it's about prevention at the end of the day, right? I mean, we got a problem. Let's see what we can do to prevent it, and go forward in the fastest means possible. I mean, we're in our uncharted territory here, anyways. So
we got caught very unprepared. Yeah.
So there's quite a few different dialysis machines. Would this work with all of them?
Most of them. So what we're focusing on is HD machines, hemodialysis machines. This is the type of machine that you would see in a hospital or clinic where somebody is going in for a couple to few hour treatment with hemodialysis. And there's other hemodialysis machines that are smaller and they're longer. The patient will basically plug themselves in overnight. Those machines aren't as much applicable here, but the HD machines is what we're focused on primarily, and of which there are dozens of different models and age brackets of these machines and different features, different software. So that's one of the things that this engineering firm up in Seattle is going to assist us on, is one, doing a full analysis of, and we have a pretty comprehensive list already, a full analysis of each of these machines available and any minute differences between them that might alter the standard operating procedure for our retrofit and for use. Most of them are so similar in nature that it wouldn't require it to be written down, the differences of, but just to cover any questions that might come up from the practitioners using it. We want to make sure they have that option digitally available to them, to where they can punch in the model number of what machine they're using, the model number of what type of oxygenator they're using, because there's over a dozen different types of oxygenators. So they'll be able to punch in that combination and have a well-crafted step-by-step SOP for that. So we're looking at about 85 different combinations, I project, and that'll all be basically available for download in a PDF form, or possibly even an app down the road.
Yeah, that's great. So has anybody actually tried this on a live patient, or is this just theory right now?
So it's important to look at the mechanical aspect of this when understanding the following answer. Have we tried Echo as a joined machine, to join two machines together for this purpose? No, we have not. We can't legally do it until we have an executive order to do so. But I do want to be very clear. The oxygenator is the key technology here. That's directly off of ECMO. That's well-grounded with 50 years of technology behind it. We know everything there is to know about blood oxygenation at that level. So that's the replaceable part that you use one per one patient. So it's a disposable part, comes in a little sealed bag, that's sterile bag. That's the part that's so important here. And the other parts that we're replacing by using a hemodialysis machine is simply an electric pump, a roller pump, and a console with some monitoring equipment, such as, blood pressure monitoring, such as air gas, or blood gas monitoring, such as an air trap. These various normal, well-accepted, pieces of testing equipment. And there were so many similarities between Echo and ECMO that it becomes an engineering obvious that it is apples to apples. ECMO has a pump, hemodialysis has a pump. Both of them are able to pump, but at similar flow rates. ECMO has a console with a dashboard and software that is fairly equivalent to that on ECMO. So, looking at these all side by side, it is the same machine. It's simply a different brand, if you were to look at it that way. I'm very confident as a design engineer to say that this will work. This does work. And all of the I's are dotted and T's are crossed when it comes to why it would work. If we were infringing on the blood oxygenation technology of that oxygenator, I would say we're not saying that until we test it. But given the fact that we're changing a pump to a pump, that's to break it down really far, that would be like saying you can't take an engine out of a Chevy and put it in a Ford. Well, you definitely can. You might have to adjust the bell housing or something like that to get it to hook up to the transmission, maybe a couple of position on motor mounts, etc. But we know that Chevy motor was working just fine, and we know that Ford chassis was working just fine. So let's put them together to have a running truck. It's not the most preferred situation to have to retrofit something on the fly and in a hurry. But what's the alternative? We have our task force that's focused on ventilators for the last several weeks, only to find out that they're actually hurting people. We have vaccines that are unproven and untested that are getting broadcast, as a possible solution here. I saw one expert on the news saying that this anti-malaria drug had zero side effects. He emphasized that several times on CNN, 0 side effects. Being former military, we're given those drugs, we're given those anti-malaria vaccines and drugs, and let me tell you, there is side effects, and you get a nice pile of paperwork to tell you what those side effects are when you get these vaccines, and it's not a realistic therapy to start just playing with pharmaceuticals until you hit the jackpot. Let's use a physical therapy that is proven and grounded in science. Are we willing to do a clinical trial? Yes, absolutely. As soon as we have authorization, and it would only take a few days to prove it. One of the conversations I've had with a couple of the doctors we've talked to is, if it helps, let's hook me up to it. I'm that confident in my engineering. Let's hook me up to it. Let's go.
Great. Yeah, that was a great comparison. Also with the Chevy, it broke it down in layman's terms that I could understand, because I'm just a regular, average, everyday guy that doesn't know much about anything except himself. Let's see. We got. So I mean, this sounds great for the United States, but I mean, this is a world problem. Would this be a product that would be rolled out and able to help places like Italy and Europe?
Definitely. We talked to a couple of medical professionals in Italy that said that they definitely have a similar envelope of tools available, machines available in Italy. So we're definitely prepared to roll this out worldwide. And as a patriot, as a Marine, I look at that and I say, we need to go through the U.S. government. I don't want to overstep our bounds going abroad first. That's our White House's job. We have this coronavirus task force for a reason. We need to get their attention. That's going to be a cost. Obviously, that's going to be an expensive endeavor going forward with this. We had an opportunity to get the task force attention early on. It was dismissed. Candidly, that's the only doctor we've talked to, Dr. Ben Carson, that has been dismissive of this idea. And I've talked to over 100 doctors. So. I'm assuming, like I said, to be fair, I'm assuming he's inundated, he's overloaded, and he probably didn't read my write-up. And that's a fair position given the situation. So let's double down. Let's bring, several doctors endorsing this, and let's bring a third-party engineering write-up that has vetted my work, and let's, bring a full patent write-up, which we've done, and let's re-demonstrate it to them. If that doesn't work, then we're going to have to get a little more creative to get this out there. Which we're already working on that backup plan. But the sooner we get this out there, the more lives we could save, because this is a therapy that could last anywhere from 2 days to a couple of weeks for each patient that's in critical shape. One example I wanted to bring up to prove the concept that blood oxygenation therapy works, and that using immunosuppressants in small doses works for survival of this. There's a doctor here in Seattle not too long ago, worked at Evergreen Health there. He got infected by most likely by one of his patients, and he got infected early on, and they intubated him. They put him on a ventilator. That wasn't working. He remembers the news said, anyway, the article I read said that he remembers telling his wife where his life insurance paperwork was. He knew he was gone. He knew as soon as they were getting ready to intubate him that he wasn't coming back from this. The doctors that were working on him went the extra mile. Amazing people. They went the extra mile, and they said we need to get him onto ECMO. And one of the doctors had an idea, from what I understand, had an idea to put him on immunosuppressants to decrease his body's reaction to the virus. The guy's at home right now recovering, alive and well. So that substantiates what I've been saying from the beginning. There's many patients that have been put on ECMO, not nearly enough, but many enough to show that direct blood oxygenation therapy works. And the few people that we've lost that have been on ECMO, I think was a direct cause by having to wait too long to put them on ECMO. And that's a reasonable position for the care facilities to be in because they don't have it readily available. This will make it available.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for your service as a former military.
It's my pleasure.
Jake, you're not a doctor, right?
No, I'm an inventor. We've had several successful inventions that have came out onto the marketplace, and I just like to look at things and say, how can we simplify it? How can we make it better? I have a growing patent portfolio in various industries.
Where did you get the idea, though, that you could come up with a new and effective way to save patients suffering with COVID?
We were working with a few doctors on another semi-related medical device that we're going to be putting out onto the market next year. And it was during one of those meetings that one of the doctors had mentioned, hey, if we could launch that product now, it could help with the coronavirus. And one of the features of that other product is direct blood oxygenation. So, since we're not ready to launch that primary product, we went back to the drawing board and said, what can we retrofit now? So it's a need. And, I like to look at macro problems and propose solutions for them. It's an obvious need. We've got a major economic crisis going on right now because of the lockdowns, and the lockdowns are caused because social distancing is having to get taken to the max because we don't know how to get a handle on this. So I believe by introducing a proper solution, a viable solution, not only will you save an unknown amount of lives, but you would also be able to turn the economy around pretty quick. As soon as you take death off the table, this crisis changes its tune pretty quick. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, well, I'm not working, and I'm, my life has pretty much been put on hold, all aspects of it. So, I like I said, we're in uncharted territory, and there's a lot of unrest right now in the general population because nobody knows what's next. Where do we go from here? There's a lot of uncertainty happening. So,
in combination, there's a lot of misinformation going around. So that adds to the fear. That adds to the situation, and getting a handle on that it could be a very dangerous thing for our economy, for our country as a whole, and for the individual family. One of our concerns here at Evolving Medical Solutions is that you keep this lockdown, going too long, you're going to see massive layoffs, which we're already starting to see, and with that, you're going to see massive depression and other things, which leads to large number of suicides historically. So the coronavirus directly, somebody doesn't have to be infected with the coronavirus to be affected by the coronavirus. We're all affected by the coronavirus right now, and some of us are going to hit such a low point in depression where we think that all is lost and give up. And, that's a very heartbreaking thing to think about, that people that die could lose that much hope. So, what we're hoping to do with Echo is to produce this as a therapy that stops the death toll from the actual virus and gives hope back to the economy. Let's turn this economy back around. Our president, in my opinion, has done a fantastic job with building the economy up, and I think he can do it again. So, it's exciting that we have a lot of innovators out there that are looking at PPE solutions and other things. And, us here at EMS, much like many other people, are, working around the clock to do so. I've spent many nights, pretty much every night since this pandemic, when I do need to get a little sleep, it's on the couch at my office. So the intent is to kick this out as soon as possible, and I'm hoping that we get that attention within the next couple of weeks at the latest, so we can roll this out and be there in time to slow this primary hump and put a stop to the secondary hump that's inevitable.
Yeah, we definitely need something that's going to help curb this thing. Your website has some really good graphics and detailed explanations about how this is going to work. What's to stop anyone from just taking your idea and doing it themselves?
Well, for starters, we did go ahead and file a set of patents on this, so it is patent pending. The second thing I want to say, and the more important thing I want to say, is that when it comes to patent ownership, I'm very willing to cooperate. However, our government, sees realistic and necessary for those patent rights. This was designed to be a solution, not a piece of paper in a box. Third, I'd like to say that I hope somebody steals it. If they do, if somebody were to knock this off, then guess what? People's lives are going to get saved. So, of course, as a patent holder from a business aspect, I hope that there's, room for this patent to maintain with my company and that people have good integrity. But when I look at the worst case scenario from a business perspective only, that there is a realistic possibility this technology could get knocked off that might eventually end up in court. I look at it and I say, well, if that saves hundreds of thousands of lives, that's a pretty good worst case scenario in my book.
Yeah. I would agree with you there. So you're on my podcast today because you need help. Am I right to assume that?
Yes.
So how can my listeners help you and get your message out there?
So our primary agenda is exposure. I think that as we get a little bit more exposure, possibly our senators or congressmen would get word of this, possibly at the federal level with our coronavirus task force there, might get wind of this and take a second look at it quicker. But also, it's an expensive process. Developing something this quick and putting this many hours into it, we could use a couple other engineers. We could use several other MDs to, look this over in every which way possible to double check, triple check our work, and get this out there. So we did open a Indiegogo campaign that's available on our website. We're hoping that people will share that for the exposure, and if they can, donate a couple of bucks, and if for nothing else, share it on their social media page. It would help us out a lot, and I believe that that could be key in launching this out there sooner.
That's great, man. Everybody is really pulling together right now across the board, from, people that I've been talking to and interviewing the last couple of days, from, coaches and personal development people, but also, the people that are sitting at home making masks and helping with the PPE issue that we're having, and just everybody's trying to do their part right now, and you're obviously doing
Definitely.
the same, and I would like to commend you for trying to do your part in helping humanity.
We're definitely trying for it, and I'm hoping we get it out there soon. It could could save a lot of lives.
So is there anything that we didn't cover that you would like to get out there?
Yeah, if I could announce my web address for people to check us out on. It's evolvingmedicalsolutions.org, O-R-G, and that's evolvingmedicalsolutions.org.
And then you're also going to have a spot to, like in my show notes, where all of this information, any of your links to like the Facebook one that I'm looking at right now, and I think I'm on your evolvingmedicalsolutions.org link that you've given me. So all of that will go into the show notes, as well as anything else that you may feel pertinent or need to do. Maybe your Indiegogo link as well for your crowdfunding campaign.
I would appreciate that very much.
Yeah, not a problem. Yeah, I just want to thank you for stopping by and making your time available.
I appreciate you having us on the show.
Yeah, not a problem, man. Just trying to do what I can to help this situation as well. And you reached out to me. It was kind of on a fluke how we crossed paths, but
yeah, so just reach out and see who answers the phone, and you were definitely there for us. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, not a problem. Everything will be available in the show notes for Jake and his invention, the Echo, and the oxygenation, the blood oxygenation, a component of a machine that helps facilitate that. I just want to thank you for taking the time today. Yeah, we'll be in touch. I'll let you know. Hang out after this, and we can talk a little bit more about the strategy of putting this out.
Sean, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate you.
Thanks. Thank you for listening to the show, and thanks to Jake for stopping by and sharing a little about Echo and his mission to get it into the hands of medical facilities and doctors in the hopes of saving more lives in the fight against the COVID-19 virus. You can find links to where you can find out more information about Echo and Evolving Medical Solutions in the show notes. If you have been wondering about what you can do to help with the effort in trying to fight COVID-19, here's your chance. You can share this episode on your social media channels. You can share the links in the show notes as well. Thanks again to Jake, and good luck with the process in getting this rolled out and helping the country start recovering from this pandemic. As always, keep it 100, stay true to yourself. Everything else is just noise. This is just noise. This is just noise. This is just noise.